want to challenge something today that I think we've all gotten wrong about micromanagement. Now, I'm the first to tell you I do not like to be micromanaged. And when someone on a team complains that their manager is micromanaging, our instinct is usually to look at the manager's personality. They're controlling, they don't trust people, they need to let this go. And sometimes, sometimes that's true. But in my experience, a lot of what gets labeled as micromanagement isn't actually a personality flaw, it's a structural problem. The structure that's missing is clarity. Here's what I mean. When expectations aren't clear, when a manager has not defined what done well actually looks like, or when a team member doesn't know what decisions they're allowed to make without checking in, what happens is rework and mistakes, and the manager swoops back in and takes it over. The team feels controlled. The manager feels like they can't trust anyone to follow through, and the cycle repeats. This is how a manager gets into a cycle of micromanagement and taking over people's jobs. But that's not a trust problem. That's a clarity problem. They require completely different solutions. There are solutions we need to implement when trust is the problem. But if clarity is the problem, we need to work on that first. If you try to fix a clarity problem by working on trust, you will spin your wheels. Because the real issue isn't whether the manager believes in the team, it's that there's no shared definition of what success actually looks like. So everyone is constantly second guessing. I've watched this pattern show up in city governments, in nonprofits, in healthcare, in organizations across every sector I've worked in. And the good news is it's one of the most solvable leadership problems there is. Once we know that this is the issue, this is very, very solvable and very fixable. So today we're going to talk about what clarity looks like in practice, not as a management philosophy, but as a set of specific, repeatable behaviors that a leader or manager can implement. Because clarity isn't a personality trait either. It's a skill that every manager, supervisor, and leader can build. Let's revisit that micromanagement cycle. Did you get that really clearly? Did you recognize it? Have you had that experience where the expectation was unclear and therefore the work didn't meet the expectation because the person doing it didn't understand? And then it was sent back and the person reworked it and they still didn't get it right. And so the manager or the supervisor stepped back in. That happens to so many of us, and it's so frustrating for everybody in the situation. So let's really think about what clarity looks like in that situation. How do we set expectations in a way that is very, very clear so that the person understands them and therefore has an opportunity to meet them? Sometimes as leaders, I think we avoid doing this because we're worried about being rigid or being over specific or over managing. And I do want you to not give people the exact to-do list, an exact list of tasks. But we want to reduce the ambiguity that forces people into guess and check mode. We want to not have them coming to us going, is this right? Is this kind of what you meant? Right? When clarity is present, managers don't need to hover. They don't need to be right there the whole time because the work has a clear standard to aim at. The way that you create that sort of clarity is by giving people a specific outcome and specific standards of what something looks like. You want to help them connect their work to the purpose of the organization and to the purpose of the project. You want to help them understand the boundaries of what they can do and what they can't do. So let's talk about 4 practical clarity moves. If you're listening to this and you're going, I think I've fallen into this trap, I have definitely taken back work from somebody because it wasn't done right when I probably hadn't really given them good clarifying instructions. But how do I even go about doing that? So I want you to do these 4 things. The first one is define the outcome not the task. You're not going to give them a task list of do A, B, C, and D, but you're going to say, here's what done looks like. You are done with this project when. This is the outcome, the standard, the final version, what the final version looks like. And then you let them take their own path to get there, their own time frame, but here's what done looks like. Number two is that I want you to clarify decision rights. What can that person decide without you? And what do they need to come back to you for? So if X, Y, or Z happens, please come back to me and ask. But everything else is within your purview. Or here's the decisions you can make, but if you run up against this problem, come back and let's talk about it before you move forward. So number two is clarify decision rights. The third thing that I want you to do, and this one's important, and we skip this a lot, is verify understanding. Don't assume it. Now, the secret here is most leaders skip this step because they don't want the other person to feel like they're second guessing them. Your person that you're supervising will not feel second guessed. They will feel heard and understood. If you just say, okay, can you repeat that back to me or tell me what you're taking on? Explain to me how you understand the outcome. Yes, this takes a little bit more time. It does put them on the spot, but it verifies understanding. It gives you a moment right then to clarify any expectations before they go out and do the work so that you're not having to do it after they've done a first draft. And the fourth and final thing to really get clarity right is to build a clarity rhythm. Build brief, regular check ins that prevent rework instead of reacting to it. So, depending on the project, depending on the relationship you have with the person, depending on how long you've worked together and what that looks like, you want to have some sort of regular check in process. Whether that's we're going to talk about this project every week during our weekly one on one, or we're going to touch base every day at the end of the day for a little while, build in regular check ins. One hint on this is that at the beginning of a supervisory relationship or the beginning of a brand new project, these check ins need to be a lot more often. When you are just training somebody and you're both still learning how to communicate about expectations, you may need to check in every day. That may feel like a lot, but early on in the relationship, checking in more often will actually build trust and communication patterns of clarity that will mean you don't have to do it as much later. So I want you to walk away knowing that clarity is not about controlling people, that when you've been clear about expectations and outcomes, it actually sets your people free to do really amazing work without second guessing because they understand what the outcome is. They understand what done looks like. So clarity, this first piece in the clarity times connection equals commitment framework, is a very solvable issue. If you have this issue in your team and in your organization, it's very solvable, but it's very, very important because people will absolutely leave your organization if they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing and if they feel like they're being micromanaged. I'd love to know from you, what is an area right now that you feel like clarity is weak on your team? What's an area where you as a leader or as a manager or an HR director could be providing more clarity? And if you are a follower on a team, what's an area where you need more clarity? And remember, you can always lead up and ask for that clarity, even if you haven't gotten it from your leader yet. So pay attention to clarity, pay attention to expectations, and really make sure that your people understand what it means to be done with this particular project or task. And it will make a huge difference in your work together.